Even though I understand the meaning behind Bon's father sacrificing himself, and I know this is one of the better chapters of Taizai, especially with some of the things that happened this week on chapter 146, I still have to admit I am slightly disappointed with some of the events of this chapter. For one, it's not that this chapter was bad. Like I said, it was a good chapter. But what disappoints me is that there was many paths that Nakaba-sensei could have taken with what happened with last week's chapter setup. For instance, with Bon's soul being pushed out of his body, it left room for multiple different paths. For one, Bon could have died, which could have led to where Jericho would have picked up the mantle from Bon and carried on his legacy, and she might be in the exact same situation as Bon was throughout the entirety of Taizai. Or you could have it to where Jericho, for some reason, she would sacrifice her life, which would cause it to where Bon realizes how much he has sacrificed just for this one girl, his woman, as he says to Elaine, how much he has sacrificed to get her back. If Jericho would have sacrificed herself, that would have added some really good development for Bon as well. And then also, if Elaine would have sacrificed herself, well, that would have been one of the greatest moments in the series, not because I dislike Elaine, because I actually like Elaine's character, but if she would have died, it would have caused it where Bon would have to permanently give up Elaine. He would have to move on. He would go through depression, of course, and then eventually he would have to probably turn his eyes to someone else, for instance, Jericho, and it would have settled the Elaine X Bon ship, and it would have been able to get that love triangle completely out of the way. But that wasn't really my main issue. What I see here is that Bon's father sacrificed himself to save Bon. And I understand the meaning of it, and I get the entire perspective of what Nakaba-sensei was trying to go for, and I'm not the writer of Taizai, so I don't know what type of future in-game goals he has for Bon, or Elaine, or Jericho in the future, because I don't know what Nakaba-sensei is going to do next. But the big thing I have to say is that I just hope what Nakaba-sensei did right here leads into some really good character development for Bon, because the meaning behind the father Bon dying for Bon, like giving up his soul and getting devoured by Garen, is that he was a thief that constantly stole. But out of being a thief, he gave up the most important thing that a thief wants, his life. And that was the meaning behind that entire exchange with the souls. For instance, Bon's father sacrificing himself for Bon to live on. And it was a really meaningful segment of this chapter that really got me. Like, it was a really good read when I saw this, and I'm like, damn, this is pretty good, Nakaba-sensei. And I know what he was trying to imply. He was saying, like, how Bon has accepted his father, along with how Bon has lost another loved one, and to put him more in a spiral of tragedy, because we know Bon kind of constantly loses people he cares about. And then, on top of that, you also have it to where the meaning of the thief, you know, him sacrificing his life is like something a thief would never do, because a thief usually steals. They steal things from others. But for the first time, like, you see a thief that gives up their life and is willing to give something up instead of stealing something away, because that is what Bon's father did. He gave up his life. He laid down his life for his son. Even though it wasn't his blood-related son, he gave up his life for his son. And I know many Chibits were talking in the comments a couple of chapters back when Bon's father died, and they were saying, like, oh, he's a shitty father, I didn't like him, the way he was acting, you know, his entire persona. But let's look into the details of how Bon's father came back, because I know that's going to be one of the big issues I see already in the comments before I even upload this video. I know I'm going to see it quite a bit. I know there's going to be some asking, so how in the fuck did Bon's father's soul get there at the time to when Bon got yanked out of his body and he was floating up and then Garen, you know, caught him? Or we supposedly thought Garen caught him. So what happened there? How did that happen? What led up to those events? So there's really no concrete information of what really caused this, but if I had to make assumptions or assume what really happened, I think since Scylla, she can summon the souls back from the dead, and she can bring them to life, I feel like since she was using her magic and power, and, you know, she was just constantly bringing souls back, and we do know when Bond's father died, he died around in the exact same time as when Elaine got resurrected, and then the others were getting brought back. It might be possible, since Bond's father died like he did, he might have still had some lingering regrets about his other child, or a Bond, of how he left him, and, you know, how he blamed himself. He had some form of regrets when he was passing on, which caused it to where Scylla grabbed his soul and was about to resurrect him, which it didn't happen yet, but he was going to get resurrected very soon, and I felt like that's why his soul was kind of hanging around, and why he was around Scylla when you saw, like, Elaine attack Scylla, which I want to point that out. If you go back to the last chapter, chapter 145, Elaine attacks Scylla. You see her magic, like these black tentacle shadow things, they get pushed back by Elaine, and you see the soul come out in this latest chapter. So it looks like Scylla was holding souls back, and you had it to where Bond's father's soul was in there, and since Elaine attacked her, she let go of one of the souls that escaped, and you had it to where it saw Bond and replaced itself with Bond. So that's what I think really happened with how the soul got there, and how Bond's father was able to exchange places. Now, I don't know really how Garen was able to do a colossal fuck-up as not seeing the other soul, but let's just roll with it for now. So yeah, I mean, the chapter of Taizai, besides getting into the last portions I will get into in a second, when it comes to Bond living on, Elaine living on, or supposedly gonna die actually very soon, still, when it comes to Bond living, I'm happy he's alive, I am, but sometimes I have to admit, I'm a little bit disappointed because of how this was done, because I saw many different paths this could have took that would have been really interesting to see Bond go through, especially if he would have lost Elaine and she was gone for good. That would have been some really good moments in the series, I mean, along with Jericho, if he lost Jericho as well, or if Bond did lose his life, and what Jericho would have to go through if she lost Bond. So, I mean, there's many paths it could take, and I guess the reason why I'm mainly upset is just because it didn't go down the path I thought would have been the best. But I'm not the writer of the series, so I don't know exactly what is going to happen next, and if we have future plans for Jericho and Elaine, which I'm assuming we do, but maybe Nakaba-sensei has a bigger goal in mind, and maybe he doesn't want to kill off these certain characters just yet. But for now, though, getting into the next part of this chapter review, the Jericho scene, or when Bond comes back, actually, that's where I'll start. Bond, as we know, he gets his soul back in his body, and he still has his physical hunt and all that. All his powers are still activated, and he still has his strength to where he can outmatch the Ten Commandments. And as soon as he comes back, he snatches the two hearts from the Ten Commandments. You have to where Scylla's heart comes out, and Garen's heart comes out, and then the hearts get fucking destroyed, and then all of a sudden, Bond grabs Jericho and Elaine's body, and just starts fucking running for it, running for the hills. So, let's point this out real quick. Scylla and Garen, they're not dead yet. Like, they're not dead, and we have seen in the past, previously in Taizai, where there was a demon that had their heart taken out, and they weren't dead after that fact. So, it doesn't mean just because your heart is taken out that you die instantly. So, this probably is something very bad, because maybe they're going to be even more weakened than what they were previously before this fight began, because of their heart being destroyed, but also there might be other repercussions down the road in the future for something like this to happen to these Ten Commandments. And then also having it to where Bond is now fell unconscious. Like, he fell unconscious with Elaine, and then, like, they're both just, they can't move. They're just pretty much might as well be unconscious or useless. They're sacks of meat that can't even move. So it's pretty bad, because right now Jericho is having to stand up against the Ten Commandments. And regardless if the Ten Commandments are weakened, they have their hearts busted, and, you know, a majority of their power has been taken away because of Bond, it does not mean that, you know, Jericho's gonna have an easy time. No, that's not gonna be like that, because still, Garen is way stronger than normal Holy Knights, even at his weakened state. So it's not going to be an easy fight, and even then, I don't think Jericho is really going to be able to hold up against two of them at once. Now, if she does, holy fucking shit, maybe she might unlock her hidden potential that she's always wanted to unlock, and she had to use, you know, demon blood to unlock. Maybe she will unlock some form of hidden potential, but for now, Jericho, I just don't think you're going to be able to stand a chance. Now, what I do see happening, however, which I could be wrong, there might be a possibility that King might reappear, because we do know King is coming over to where Bond is, so it might be possible to where King is going to appear and save Jericho and them before they get taken out. But even then, though, I have to point out the sexual tension between Bon and Elaine in this chapter, like when you saw them on top of each other. Like, there was just some very strong sexual tension going on right there, and I'm like, oh my god. So, I saw what you did there, Nakaba-sensei. So yeah, there's my thoughts of this chapter of Taizai. It was a good chapter. I'm not going to say this chapter was bad, but like I said, when it comes to my personal feelings about the chapter, I am a little bit disappointed just because of some of the way these events were executed. But that's just my personal opinion. So you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.